The alarm bells echoed through the massive halls of the Galactic Empire's Strategic Intelligence Division. Commander Veltara lifted her 6 arms and touched the control panel with practiced movements. Her species had served the Empire for thousands of years, and nothing ever surprised them anymore. Today felt different. The holographic display showed readings that made no sense. Energy signatures were coming from a small spiral arm that the Empire had marked as primitive life zones just 50 years ago. The numbers on the screen were impossible. No species could advance from basic space travel to faster-than-light technology in such a short time. "Show me the detailed scans," Veltara commanded her assistant. The images that appeared made her pause. Ships that looked nothing like Empire designs were moving between planets in a small yellow star system. These ships used technology that the Empire's computers could not identify. Even worse, the energy patterns suggested these beings had developed everything on their own. Far away in the Sol system, Kang Dae-ho was working his usual shift on Europa Station. He was a mining engineer who spent his days extracting valuable materials from Jupiter's frozen moon. Today was special because Captain Park Yoon-ji was scheduled to arrive with her exploration ship, the New Horizon. Kang Dae-ho watched through the station's windows as the sleek vessel approached. The New Horizon was one of humanity's newest ships, capable of traveling faster than light using quantum drives that human scientists had invented just 10 years ago. The sight still amazed him. His grandfather had told him stories about when humans could barely reach their own moon. Captain Park Yoon-ji was known throughout the human colonies as a skilled explorer. She had discovered 3 new habitable worlds and established peaceful contact with 2 alien species that lived in nearby systems. Today, she was preparing for humanity's most ambitious mission yet, a journey to the galactic core where the mysterious Galactic Empire was said to rule over millions of worlds. "Dae-ho, come aboard," Park Yoon-ji called over the communication system. "We need your expertise for this mission." Kang Dae-ho quickly gathered his equipment and boarded the New Horizon. The ship's interior was comfortable and efficient, designed by human engineers who believed that people worked better in spaces that felt like home. This was very different from Empire ship designs, which prioritized function over comfort. "We're heading into unknown territory," Park Yoon-ji explained as they prepared for departure. "Our long-range sensors have detected a massive fleet of alien ships. They seem to be watching us." 3 days later, the New Horizon encountered its first Empire patrol fleet. 5 enormous vessels surrounded the human ship. Each Empire vessel was 10 times larger than the New Horizon and followed designs that had not changed for centuries. The Empire believed that perfect efficiency had already been achieved, so innovation was unnecessary. Commander Veltara was aboard the lead Empire ship. She had volunteered to make first contact with these mysterious beings who called themselves humans. According to Empire protocols, first contact followed strict rules. The new species would be evaluated, classified, and either absorbed into the Empire or marked for future conquest. "Unknown vessel, you will prepare for boarding," Veltara transmitted to the New Horizon. "Submit to standard Empire classification procedures." Park Yoon-ji responded in clear galactic common language, which surprised Veltara. Most primitive species took months to learn proper communication protocols. "Greetings to the Galactic Empire. I am Captain Park Yoon-ji of the Human Defense Fleet. We request peaceful dialogue according to the universal rights of sentient species." Veltara's confusion grew. The Universal Rights of Sentient Species was an ancient document that most Empire officials had forgotten. How did these humans know about it? More importantly, why were they invoking rights instead of simply submitting to Empire authority? The situation became more complicated when diplomat Lee Kyung-min transported aboard the Empire vessel. He was a tall human with confident eyes who showed no fear despite being surrounded by aliens. Most new species trembled during their first encounter with Empire representatives. "Commander Veltara," Lee Kyung-min said, with a respectful bow. "I bring greetings from the United Human Colonies. We seek friendship and trade relationships with the Galactic Empire. You will submit to classification procedures," Veltara repeated, following standard protocol. "Your species will be evaluated for Empire citizenship or client status." Lee Kyung-min smiled politely. "I appreciate the offer, but humanity has already established its own government. We prefer to maintain our independence while developing positive relationships with our galactic neighbors. This response was not in any of Veltara's training manuals. New species either begged to join the Empire for protection or fought desperately against conquest. None had ever calmly declared their intention to remain independent while offering friendship. Your species lacks the technology and knowledge necessary for galactic citizenship, Veltara explained. The Empire provides guidance and protection to developing worlds. That's very kind, Lee Kyung-min replied. However, we've already established colonies in 47 star systems and maintain peaceful relationships with several other species. We're doing quite well on our own. Veltara's shock was visible to her crew. The Empire's most recent intelligence reports had marked the Sol system as containing one planet with primitive technology. How had these humans colonized 47 systems without anyone noticing? This is impossible, Veltara said. Our records show no evidence of your species' expansion. You should not possess faster-than-light technology. Lee Kyung-min looked genuinely confused. Why should you have records of our activities? We developed our technology independently and expanded peacefully into unclaimed systems. We haven't bothered anyone. The word independently sent chills through Veltara's crew. In 50,000 years of galactic history, no species had developed advanced technology without Empire guidance or the influence of ancient precursor races. The Empire's power was based on controlling technological advancement throughout the galaxy. You will remain here while we verify your claims, Veltara commanded. Actually, we have other appointments, Lee Kyung-min said politely, but we'd be happy to schedule a proper diplomatic meeting at your convenience. Perhaps your representatives could visit our colony on New Terra next month. With that, Lee Kyung-min transported back to his ship. The New Horizon activated its quantum drive and disappeared, leaving the Empire fleet staring at empty space. Veltara immediately contacted her superiors. For the first time in her long career, she'd encountered something that was not recorded in Empire databases. The human's very existence challenged everything the Empire thought it knew about galactic development. As emergency meetings began throughout Empire space, nobody realized that this was just the beginning. Humanity was about to change everything. The Empire's greatest scholars were confused and worried. Archivarch Zixmoth had spent 3 centuries studying the development of galactic civilizations. He had read every historical record in the Empire's vast databases. Never before had he encountered a species that developed advanced technology without any outside influence. Show me the human files again. Zixmoth commanded his research team. The holographic displays filled with data about human civilization. What they saw made no sense. Humans had gone from basic chemistry to faster-than-light travel in less than 300 years. Most species took thousands of years to achieve such advancement, and only with guidance from older civilizations. Even more troubling was how human technology worked. Dr. Choi Hai-wan, a human quantum physicist, had invented something called an entanglement drive that made Empire scientists shake their heads in disbelief. According to Empire physics, her technology was impossible. The humans claim their ships can instantly communicate across any distance, reported Dr. Vexnell, the Empire's chief scientist. They say quantum particles can be entangled and share information faster than light. Zixmoth studied the technical reports. Our physics prove this is impossible. Quantum entanglement cannot transfer information. That's what we told them, Dr. Vexnell replied nervously. The human scientists just smiled and showed us their working communication system. Meanwhile, in human space, Admiral Kim Tae-sung was reviewing tactical reports aboard the dreadnought Indomitable. The massive human warship was built using revolutionary manufacturing techniques that allowed it to be both stronger and lighter than anything in the Empire's fleet. Kim Tae-sung was not worried about the Empire's military power. Human war games had tested their strategies against every known Empire tactic. The results always favored humanity, not because humans had better weapons, but because they thought differently about warfare. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Empire Space, reported his communications officer. Put it through, Kim Tae-sung replied. Commander Veltara appeared on the screen, looking tired and frustrated. Behind her, Kim Tae-sung could see dozens of Empire officials arguing in what appeared to be a state of panic. Admiral Kim, the Empire demands a full explanation of your species' technological capabilities, Veltara said formally. Kim Tae-sung leaned back in his chair and smiled. Commander, We've already shared our basic technical specifications with your scientists. What specific information do you need? Your quantum drives violate the laws of physics, Veltara stated. Your manufacturing techniques should be impossible. Your ships maneuver in ways that our computers cannot predict. I understand your confusion, Kim Tae-sung replied patiently. Our technology is based on different principles than yours. We focus on adaptability and innovation rather than following established patterns. This answer made Veltara even more frustrated. All advanced civilizations follow the same technological development path. This has been true for 50,000 years. You cannot simply ignore the natural laws of scientific progress. Kim Tae-sung paused before responding. He was beginning to understand the Empire's problem. Commander, who told you there was only one path to advanced technology? The question seemed to shock Veltara. The precursor races established the fundamental principles of galactic civilization. All member species follow their guidance. We've never heard of these precursor races, Kim Tae-sung said honestly. We developed our technology by experimenting, making mistakes, and trying new approaches. We call it the scientific method. The communication ended abruptly as Veltara realized the implications of what she had just heard. Back on Empire Prime, emergency archaeological teams were being dispatched to Earth. If humans had truly developed independently, there should be no trace of precursor influence on their home world. The absence of such evidence would prove that alternative. Paths to galactic civilization were possible. Dr. Yithmore led the archaeological expedition to Earth. She was the Empire's leading expert on precursor artifacts and had discovered evidence of ancient guidance on over 300 worlds. Every advanced species showed clear signs of external technological assistance in their early development. When her team finished scanning Earth, Dr. Yithmore stared at her instruments in disbelief. The planet showed no trace of precursor visitation. No ancient artifacts, no technological gifts, no genetic modifications. Humans had developed completely on their own. This changes everything, Dr. Yithmore whispered to her assistant. If one species can develop independently, others might be able to do the same. The implications terrified the Empire's leadership. Their entire system was based on controlling technological development. If species could advance without guidance, the Empire's role as galactic protector and teacher became unnecessary. Making matters worse, human colonies were already changing the galactic balance of power. Captain Park Yoon-ji had established trade relationships with 17 different species, offering them human technology and teaching them human methods of problem-solving. The results were remarkable. Species that had remained stagnant for centuries under Empire guidance were suddenly developing new technologies. The Kethali, who had used the same mining techniques for 1,000 years, invented improved equipment after spending just 6 months working with human engineers. The Zorbine, a species that had never created original art under Empire cultural guidelines, produced beautiful sculptures after human artists taught them about creative expression and individual inspiration. Even more disturbing from the Empire's perspective, these species were beginning to question why they needed Empire oversight at all. The humans teach us to think for ourselves, reported Citizen Claxtor of the Rim Territories. They show us that there are many ways to solve problems, not just the approved methods. Empire administrators tried to dismiss these reports, but the evidence was mounting. Human influence was spreading throughout the galaxy, and everywhere it went, species began developing independence and innovation. The Empire's carefully maintained technological stagnation was beginning to collapse. For 50,000 years they had prevented rapid advancement by insisting that only one correct path existed for each field of science. Humans had proven this was false simply by existing. Commander Veltara found herself studying human philosophy and science in her spare time. What she learned frightened and fascinated her. Humans believed that diversity of thought led to better solutions. They encouraged disagreement and debate. They rewarded people for challenging established ideas. These concepts were completely alien to Empire thinking, but they clearly worked. Human colonies were more prosperous, more creative, and more adaptable than any society in the galaxy. We need to understand what makes them different, Veltara reported to her superiors. They represent something entirely new in galactic history. The Empire's ruling council was beginning to realize that they faced an unprecedented crisis. Humans could not be conquered because they were too adaptable. They could not be contained because they were too diplomatic. They could not be ignored because their influence was spreading too rapidly. For the first time in millennia, the Empire was dealing with something their vast databases could not explain or predict, and that terrified them more than any enemy fleet ever had. The Empire's High Council had not held an emergency session in over 2,000 years. The massive chamber on Empire Prime was filled with representatives from across the galaxy, all discussing the same troubling topic: humanity. Councilor Prime Thexelane called for order with his ceremonial staff. His species had ruled the Empire for 15,000 years, and his family had personally overseen the integration of over 300 species into the galactic community. Never before had he encountered a situation like this. "Fellow councilors," Thexelane began, "we face an unprecedented challenge. The species calling themselves humans continues to defy all established protocols for galactic civilization." The chamber filled with worried murmurs. Representatives shared reports from their home systems about human influence spreading throughout the galaxy. Trade routes were changing, technological development was accelerating, and client species were asking uncomfortable questions about independence. "Perhaps we should simply destroy them," suggested War Marshal Drexvor. "A demonstration of Empire power would remind other species why they need our protection." "That approach has been analyzed," replied Strategic Coordinator Nix Hala. "Our war games consistently show human victory in any direct conflict. Their tactical thinking is completely unpredictable." Admiral Han Wujin was, at that very moment, demonstrating why Empire strategists found human military doctrine so troubling. His fleet was conducting training exercises near the Centauri system, and Empire observers were watching in amazement. Instead of following standard formation patterns, human ships moved in seemingly random configurations that somehow provided perfect defensive coverage. When Empire computers tried to predict their next maneuvers, the humans would shift to entirely different tactics. "How do they coordinate without central command?" wondered Empire Admiral Zeth Kane, who was observing the exercises. "Our analysis shows no communication between their vessels, yet they move as one unit." Captain Bei Min-Su of the human destroyer Swift Arrow explained the concept to his puzzled Empire counterpart. "We call it intuitive navigation. Our crews train together until they can anticipate each other's decisions. It allows for faster responses than waiting for orders." "But that should result in chaos," Admiral Zeth Kane protested. "Proper military coordination requires strict command hierarchies and predetermined responses." "Sometimes chaos is more effective than order," Bei Min-Su replied with a smile. "Predictability makes you vulnerable to enemies who study your patterns." This conversation was recorded and transmitted to the High Council, where it caused considerable alarm. The Empire's military doctrine was based on perfect organization and predictable responses. The idea that chaos could be superior was deeply disturbing. Meanwhile, human ambassador Yoon Ji-hye was creating diplomatic problems that the Empire had never encountered. She had arrived at Empire Prime with a proposal that sounded reasonable, but contained implications that terrified the Council. The United Human Colonies propose a mutual non-aggression pact. Yoon Ji-hye announced to the assembled representatives. "We offer guaranteed peace between our species and open trade relationships that benefit everyone." Councilor Prime Thexelane studied the proposed treaty carefully. On the surface, it seemed straightforward. Both sides would respect each other's territory and engage in peaceful commerce. However, the details revealed something much more complex. "This treaty recognizes humans as equals to the Empire," Thexelane observed. "You request the same status as our government." "That's correct," Yoon Ji-hye confirmed. "Humanity believes in the equality of all sentient species. We don't recognize claims of natural superiority." The chamber erupted in shocked discussions. No species had ever claimed equality with the Empire. Client species were grateful for protection and guidance. Even the most advanced member worlds acknowledged the Empire's natural authority. "Your species lacks the experience necessary for independent governance," argued Councilor Vexthara. "The Empire has maintained galactic peace for 50,000 years. We understand the complexities of interstellar civilization." Yoon Ji-hye nodded respectfully. "We appreciate your experience, Councilor. However, humanity has successfully governed itself for thousands of years and maintained peaceful relationships with multiple species. We believe we're ready for independent participation in galactic affairs. The response was polite but devastating to Empire authority. Humans were not asking for permission to govern themselves. They were simply informing the Empire of their intention to do so. Even worse, the proposed treaty included provisions for human colonies to trade directly with Empire worlds. This would bypass the central authority that controlled all interstellar commerce and allowed the Empire to monitor and regulate technological exchange. Direct trade could destabilize our economic systems, warned Trade Administrator Coxwell. Client species depend on Empire regulation to prevent unfair competition. We understand your concerns, Yunji-hai replied. However, our analysis suggests that open trade benefits everyone involved. Competition encourages innovation and efficiency. These words sent chills through the council chambers. Innovation and efficiency were exactly what the Empire tried to control. Rapid change threatened stability, and stability was the foundation of their power. The situation became even more complex when reports arrived from the frontier territories. Human advisors were being requested by 17 different worlds that wanted to learn human methods of government and technology. The Yatsu, planet Zerion, had formally petitioned the Empire for permission to establish a human university. The Velkari system wanted human engineers to help modernize their manufacturing. 3 different species had asked for human teachers to establish schools based on creative thinking principles. They're undermining our entire system without firing a single shot, observed Intelligence Director Coxmore. Species that have been loyal for centuries are suddenly questioning our methods. The Empire's response to this crisis revealed the limitations of their rigid thinking. Every proposed solution followed established patterns that had worked for thousands of years, but were proving inadequate for dealing with humanity. Military conquest was impossible because humans were too adaptable and too skilled at warfare. Economic pressure was ineffective because humans had already established independent trade networks. Political manipulation failed because humans operated on democratic principles that made them resistant to traditional empire. Influence, we need a new approach, admitted Counselor Prime Texlane during a private session with his closest advisors. Everything we try against these humans seems to strengthen their position. The most troubling aspect of the human challenge was how it exposed weaknesses in Empire society that had gone unnoticed for millennia. Client species had accepted Empire authority because they believed it was necessary for galactic civilization. Humans had proven this was false. If humanity could maintain peace, prosperity, and technological advancement without Empire guidance, why did anyone need the Empire at all? This question was being asked throughout the galaxy as news of human achievements spread. The Empire's carefully constructed narrative of necessary authority was beginning to crumble. Perhaps, suggested cultural analyst Doxanira, we should study their methods instead of opposing them. If their approach is superior, we might learn from it. The suggestion horrified most council members. The Empire had spent 50,000 years perfecting their system of galactic governance. The idea that a species with only a few centuries of space travel could teach them anything seemed impossible. But the evidence was overwhelming. Human colonies were more prosperous, more innovative, and more peaceful than most Empire worlds. Their democratic governments had solved problems that Empire bureaucracy had struggled with for centuries. As the council session continued into its 3rd day, one fact became increasingly clear. Traditional solutions would not work against humanity. The Empire would need to adapt or risk becoming irrelevant. For a civilization that had remained unchanged for 50,000 years, this realization was more terrifying than any military threat they had ever faced. Research Director Vauxhall had dedicated his life to understanding consciousness and intelligence across the galaxy. His laboratory on Empire Prime contained the most advanced cognitive analysis equipment in known space. Today, he was using all of it to study recordings of human behavior. And what he discovered changed everything he thought he knew about sapient life. The patterns are completely wrong, Vauxhall muttered to his assistant as they reviewed brain scans of human volunteers. Their neural activity defies every model we have for advanced consciousness. Most sapient species showed predictable thought, patterns that allowed Empire psychologists to forecast behavior with reasonable accuracy. Humans were different. Their minds seemed to operate on what Vauxhall could only describe as controlled chaos. "Show me the decision-making analysis for the human engineer Song Min-ho," Vauxhall requested. The holographic display revealed something unprecedented. When faced with a complex problem, Song Min-ho's brain activity scattered in multiple directions before suddenly converging on a solution. Most species would analyze problems step by step using established methods. Humans seemed to consider dozens of possibilities simultaneously before choosing the most creative approach. "He's solving engineering challenges using artistic thinking," Vauxhall observed in amazement. "He treats technical problems like creative projects." This discovery explained why human technology was so unpredictable. Their inventors didn't follow logical development paths. Instead, they combined unrelated concepts in ways that should have failed but somehow worked perfectly. Dr. Song Min-ho was, at that moment, publishing a series of papers that would revolutionize Empire understanding of consciousness itself. Working with volunteers from 17 different species, he had discovered that intelligence could be developed and enhanced through techniques the Empire had never considered. "Consciousness is not fixed," Song Min-ho wrote in his most influential paper. "All sapient beings have the capacity for creative thinking, but most civilizations discourage it in favor of conformity and predictability." His research showed that Empire species had gradually lost their innovative abilities over thousands of years of structured education and social conditioning. The Empire's emphasis on following established patterns had actually made their citizens less intelligent than their ancestors. Even more shocking, Song Min-ho demonstrated that these abilities could be restored through human teaching methods that encouraged experimentation, questioned authority, and rewarded original thinking. The implications terrified Empire leadership. If all species had the potential for human-level creativity and innovation, the Empire's role as technological guardian became meaningless. Worse, their methods of control had actually been harming the civilizations they claimed to protect. Captain Bae Soo-jin was demonstrating another aspect of human unpredictability aboard her colony ship Wanderer. Her mission was to establish humanity's first settlement in the Andromeda system. But she had encountered an unexpected problem. The system contained an unstable wormhole that made conventional navigation impossible. Empire protocols would have required her to abandon the mission and return home. Instead, Bae Soo-jin decided to treat the obstacle as an opportunity. "We're going to stabilize the wormhole," she announced to her crew. "Captain, that's impossible," protested her science officer. "Wormhole stabilization requires technology we don't possess." "Then we'll invent it," Bae Soo-jin replied confidently. "Gather the engineering teams. We're going to try something that's never been done before." What followed was a perfect example of human problem-solving methodology. Instead of following established scientific procedures, Bae Soo-jin's crew began experimenting with combinations of their ship's various systems. They tried using their quantum drive harmonics to resonate with the wormhole's frequency. They attempted to create artificial gravity fields that would counteract the spatial distortions. Most of their experiments failed, but each failure taught them something new about wormhole physics. After 6 months of trial and error, they achieved something the Empire's greatest scientists had declared impossible. The Wanderer successfully created a stable wormhole that remained open indefinitely. Their method was crude, inefficient, and violated several principles of theoretical physics, but it worked. News of this achievement sent shockwaves through the Empire's scientific community. For 50,000 years they had believed that wormhole stabilization was impossible. Humans had accomplished it using techniques that Empire scientists would never have considered trying. They succeeded by ignoring the rules, Dr. Vexnall reported to the High Council. They don't accept that things are impossible. They simply keep experimenting until they find a way to make them work. This revelation forced Empire scientists to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the universe. How many other impossible technologies might be achievable through human-style experimentation? The answer came sooner than expected. Human teachers working with Empire species began achieving breakthrough after breakthrough in fields that had been stagnant for centuries. Oh Soo-young, a young Cathali engineer who had studied at the Human University on New Terra, invented a new type of faster-than-light communication system that surpassed both human and Empire technology. Her design combined human quantum entanglement principles with traditional Empire crystalline matrices in a way that neither species had considered. The humans taught me that there are no wrong ideas, Oh Su-young explained to amazed Empire scientists. They encouraged me to combine techniques from both our civilizations instead of choosing one approach over another. Her invention proved that collaboration between species could produce results superior to what either could achieve alone. This discovery undermined another foundation of Empire policy, the belief that technological development required strict control and standardization. Throughout the galaxy, other species were beginning to rediscover abilities they had forgotten under Empire guidance. The Zorbine developed new art forms that expressed concepts their language had no words for. The Velkari invented manufacturing techniques that increased efficiency by 300%. The Zerian discovered mathematical principles that simplified calculations Empire computers had struggled with for millennia. All of these breakthroughs came from applying human methods, questioning assumptions, encouraging experimentation, and rewarding creative thinking. Commander Veltara found herself working directly with human researchers to understand these changes. Her initial assignment had been to study humanity as a potential threat. Instead, she was learning from them. Your species thinks differently than any other we've encountered, Veltara admitted to Dr. Song Min-ho during one of their research sessions. You seem to view uncertainty as an opportunity rather than a problem. That's because uncertainty creates possibilities, Song Min-ho replied. When you don't know what will happen, you have the freedom to make it into something better. This philosophy was spreading throughout Empire space as more species learned human approaches to problem solving. Instead of following predetermined paths, they began exploring new possibilities. Instead of accepting limitations, they started challenging boundaries. The Empire's rigid social structure was beginning to crack under the pressure of all this innovation. Citizens who had never questioned authority were suddenly asking why certain rules existed. Worlds that had accepted technological stagnation were demanding access to human research methods. We're losing control, Counselor Prime Thexelane acknowledged during a closed session of the High Council. Our species are becoming independent thinkers. The irony was not lost on the Empire's leadership. Their greatest fear was that humans would conquer the galaxy through military force. Instead, humanity was transforming galactic civilization by teaching everyone to think for themselves. This was far more dangerous to Empire authority than any army could ever be. Soldiers could be defeated, but ideas were impossible to destroy once they had taken root. As reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy, one pattern became clear. Everywhere human influence reached, species began to question the necessity of Empire oversight. They were developing their own solutions to problems, forming their own alliances, and making their own decisions about their futures. The Empire faced a choice that no amount of planning had prepared them for. They could either adapt to this new reality or become irrelevant as the galaxy moved beyond their control. For a civilization that had remained unchanged for 50,000 years, adaptation seemed almost as impossible as stopping the tide of human-inspired innovation that was sweeping across the stars. The transformation began on a small frontier world called Kepler 442b, where something unprecedented was happening. For the first time in galactic history, an Empire client world had formally requested independence not through rebellion, but through peaceful negotiation. Ambassador Lim Jae-hyun stood before the planet's governing council, representing not just humanity but a new way of thinking about galactic civilization. The tall human with kind eyes had become famous throughout the galaxy for his ability to help species find their own paths to prosperity and self-governance. The people of Kepler 442b have achieved remarkable progress in the past year. Lim Jae-hyun addressed the assembly. Your agricultural innovations have increased food production by 400%. Your educational reforms have produced a generation of creative thinkers. Your democratic government has solved problems that have plagued this world for centuries. The planetary governor, a wise Velkari named Thokmiran, nodded with pride. We have learned much from human methods, Ambassador. But more importantly, we have learned to trust our own abilities. This conversation was being broadcast across the galaxy, and its implications were staggering. A species that had required Empire guidance for over 1,000 years was now prepared to govern itself independently. Even more remarkable, they had achieved this transformation through education and cooperation rather than conflict. In the Empire's capital, former Commander Veltara was working on a project that would have been unthinkable just 2 years earlier. She was rewriting the official galactic historical records to include humanity's role as what she termed the Great Variable, the factor that had changed everything. For 50,000 years, we believed there was only one path to galactic civilization, Veltara dictated to her recording systems. Humanity has proven that consciousness itself is more flexible and creative than we ever imagined. They have not just added their voice to galactic culture, they have taught us all to find our own voices. The new historical records would acknowledge that the Empire's methods, while successful for maintaining stability, had also prevented the very innovation and growth they claimed to protect. It was a painful admission for a civilization that had believed itself to be perfect. Meanwhile, on the neutral world of Haven Station, something extraordinary was taking place. Lim Jae-hyun was inaugurating the galaxy's first interspecies university, where beings from over 40 different worlds would learn and teach together. The university's design itself represented human thinking, applied to architecture. Instead of the rigid, hierarchical structures favored by empire builders, the campus featured flowing, organic buildings that encouraged interaction and collaboration between different species. Knowledge belongs to everyone, Lim Jae-hyun declared at the opening ceremony. When we share what we know and learn from each other's perspectives, we all become stronger and wiser. The student body was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Young Keithali studied quantum physics alongside human teenagers. Elderly Zorbina philosophers debated ethics with recently graduated Empire citizens. Former Empire officials sat in classes taught by species they had once considered primitive. Dr. Oh Soo-young, the Keithali engineer who had invented revolutionary communication technology, was now a professor teaching innovative engineering methods to students from across the galaxy. Her classroom was always full because her courses taught something the Empire had never offered: the freedom to fail. Failure is not defeat, Oh Soo-young would tell her students. Failure is information. Every mistake teaches us something new about what doesn't work, which brings us closer to discovering what does work. This philosophy was spreading throughout the galaxy, faster than any Empire edict had ever traveled. Species that had been paralyzed by fear of making mistakes were suddenly experimenting with new ideas, new technologies, and new forms of government. The results were remarkable. The Andorian Collective discovered new mathematical principles that revolutionized spacecraft design. The Rigel Confederation developed medical techniques that extended lifespans by decades. The Centauri Republic created art forms that expressed emotions, previously thought to be unique to individual species. Each breakthrough proved that the Empire's assumption about the necessity of central control had been wrong. Species were capable of remarkable achievements when given the freedom to explore their own potential. Counselor Prime Thexelane found himself facing a choice that no leader in Empire history had ever confronted. Reports from across the galaxy showed the same pattern. Worlds that adopted human-inspired methods of education, governance, and innovation became more prosperous, more peaceful, and more creative than they had ever been under Empire oversight. "We have two options," Thexelane announced to the High Council in what would be his final address as Supreme Leader. "We can fight against this change and become increasingly irrelevant, or we can embrace it and help create something better than the galaxy has ever known." The decision was not easy for beings who had spent their entire lives believing in the superiority of Empire methods, but the evidence was overwhelming. Human approaches to civilization were not just different, they were demonstrably better at achieving the goals the Empire claimed to value: peace, prosperity, and progress. The transformation of the Empire began with a series of constitutional reforms that would have seemed impossible just years earlier. The rigid hierarchy that had controlled galactic civilization for 50,000 years was replaced by a confederation of independent worlds working together as equals. Former Empire worlds were given the choice to maintain their traditional systems or adopt new approaches. Most chose gradual reform, implementing human-inspired educational methods and democratic principles while preserving their unique cultural identities. The military forces that had once enforced Empire authority became peacekeeping and exploration fleets, dedicated to protecting trade routes and discovering new worlds rather than conquering them. Trade networks that had once flowed through Empire-controlled Channels became open markets where any species could participate as equals. The economic growth that resulted exceeded the most optimistic projections. Most importantly, the technological stagnation that had characterized the Empire's later millennia came to an end. With hundreds of species freely sharing knowledge and experimenting with new ideas, the pace of innovation accelerated beyond anything in galactic history. Captain Park Yoonji, now an elderly woman respected throughout human space, stood on the observation deck of humanity's newest exploration vessel. The ship was a marvel of interspecies cooperation, incorporating design elements and technologies from dozens of different civilizations. "We never intended to change the galaxy," she reflected to her companion, a young Nixarian engineer who had studied at the Interspecies University. "We just wanted to explore and make friends." "Sometimes the most profound changes happen when you're not trying to change anything," the engineer replied. "Humans taught us that being ourselves rather than trying to fit into someone else's pattern was the key to finding our true potential." The exploration vessel's mission was to travel beyond the galaxy's edge, seeking new forms of life and new possibilities for civilization. It carried crew members from 23 different species, all working together using principles that combined the best ideas from every galactic culture. As the ship prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed, its crew represented something that had never existed before, a truly cooperative galactic civilization where diversity was valued over conformity, where innovation was encouraged over stability, and where every species had the freedom to contribute their unique perspectives to the common good. The galaxy that humans had encountered just a few years earlier no longer existed. In its place was something new, a confederation of independent worlds united not by fear or authority, but by shared curiosity about what they might accomplish together. The Empire's records would show that their greatest fear had been realized. Humanity had indeed changed everything. But the final entries would also note that this change had not brought chaos or destruction. Instead, it had brought the galaxy closer to achieving its true potential than 50,000 years of rigid control had ever accomplished. Humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy had not been their technology or their military prowess. It had been their unshakable belief that every sapient being deserved the freedom to think, to dream, and to reach for possibilities that others might consider impossible.